So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Hello, and welcome to the third annual Hancock, New Hampshire celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. My name is Luis Rosa. I live here in Hancock, New Hampshire, and I am a member of the Hancock Conversations on Race, a community group formed 3 years ago to explore and discuss issues regarding race, especially how race influences our lives, our community, and our nation. In honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his legacy, and his mission, today's event will bring together a number of individuals from the Monadnock region to share thoughts, visions, and especially work that they have done to undermine racism that persists in our nation. You will hear tales of their many efforts. You may hear stories of success. You may hear tales that inspire and uplift. You will also hear about pain, and you will hear about struggle. The theme of this year's celebration is continuing the work. The word that stands out, I believe, in that sentence is work. The progress that has been made thus far in our nation is the result of the toil that women and men have put forth to create change. I stand here speaking to you today in this manner, a black man, I know, as a result of this work, as a result of the toil and the sacrifice of those before who were willing to do the work. Dr. King's words inspired. His sermons and speeches often moved audiences to tears. But it was his willingness to stand with others, oftentimes pummeled by verbal and physical assault, that truly brought forth change. It is estimated that between 1955 and 1968, much of the work that Dr. King conducted and inspired, African Americans made more progress toward equality than the previous 350 years in our nation. The result of work. My father did not talk much. He did tell a few stories, mostly about his youth. One tale was of working in the cranberry bogs in Rhode Island after immigrating from the Cape Verdean Islands off of West Africa. The days, he said, were long, hot, wet. Insects were a constant bother, and he spent much of it bent over. My father shared about the mistreatment by the bosses, how they would treat him mufinu, which meant badly, like a cabra, which meant like a goat. But when talking about the actual work, he would say only that it was good. He would show us the calluses on his palms, and then he would smile, a proud smile. And then he would take his pipe, put it back in his mouth, and go back to his newspaper. Today I ask that you listen. Listen closely for the calluses in the stories that you hear. I also ask that you pay attention to the work. I ask that you think about the work that you can do. Think about the work that has been done. And again, think about the work that you can do. Because, my friends, there is so much more work that needs to be done. Again, welcome to the third annual Hancock, New Hampshire Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. Let us begin. Our first segment or presentation is by the Theberge family. It will be the presentation of the Peace Light. Tim Theberge has been a resident of Hancock since 2016. Since moving to Hancock, the proud husband and father of 3 has become very active in the local community, serving on the Conville School Board and the chair of the Hancock Telecommunications Committee. Tim sits on the Conville Board's Equity Committee, the only standing committee of its kind focused on addressing issues of equity throughout the district. Mr. Theberge, an Eagle Scout and third-generation Scouter, is the Cub Master of the local Cub Scout Pack, celebrating its 80th year in 2021. Let's welcome the Theberge family, Tim Theberge.
For over 1,000 years, oil lamps have continuously lit in the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, Israel. 34 years ago, the Peace Light campaign began in Austria as part of a charitable relief mission called Light into Darkness, which was organized for children in need. It quickly spread to become an international peace campaign. Every year, a scout from Austria fetches the light from the eternal flame and brings it back to Vienna in 2 blast-proof miner's lamps, where it is then distributed at a service of dedication with scouting delegations from more than 30 European countries. From Vienna, these scouts take the Peace Light back to their own communities to share ecumenical services throughout the European continent. The Peace Light first came to the United States by way of New York in 2001, brought by Canadian scouts who presented it at Ground Zero. In 2011, the flame, shared in New Hampshire, traveled to West Hartford, Vermont, where it was presented at a service of hope for families still struggling to recover from the devastation caused by Hurricane Irene. In 2012, Scouts in the New York City area presented the Peace Light to victims of Hurricane Sandy and the rescue workers responding to their needs. Also in 2012, Scouts from all over New England brought the Peace Light to Newtown, Connecticut, where it was welcomed at local churches and spread throughout the community in the wake of the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary School. We share that same light with you today.
Light, the element of life that we likely seldom ponder, but which drives our every moment on this earth.
Light, not only physical, but also a symbol of life, love, hope, and peace.
Light, a guiding force from within, deriving from the flame that burns inside us, calling us to action against injustice, and instructing us to use our flame to light the wick that lives within the life force of those fighting their way out of the darkness.
Let us hope that this light will live on within the hearts of those gathered here today, and that they may carry their flame with them on their journey and be prepared to share their warmth and light with the next unlit wick they come across.
Light will prevail. Love will prevail. Hope will prevail. We are all the ambassadors of light.
Our next presentation is from Jazimina MacNeil. Jazimina is a mezzo-soprano and creative catalyst rooted in the Monadnock region in New Hampshire. A graduate of the Curtis Institute of Music and Manhattan School of Music, she is grateful to have landed in such a fertile artistic ecosystem and is honored to collaborate frequently with her friends at the Apple Hill Center for the Chamber of Music. Ashulet concerts, Electric Earth concerts, music on Norway Pond, and the Harris Center, among others. Welcome, Jazimina MacNeil.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. Oh, beautiful for freedom's hope, although at times unseen, the promise one day we may see the long-awaited dream. America, America, God grant that we will see true brotherhood and sisterhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful when worth is found in every single face, when content of our character eclipses rank and race. America, America, God grant that we may see true brotherhood and sisterhood from sea to shining sea. For the spacious skies, every single face, for the hope unseen, the long-awaited dream. Oh, beautiful when children sing, free from hate and fear. Now hear their laughter sweet and pure, young voices ringing clear. America, grant that we will see true brotherhood and sisterhood from sea to shining sea.
Our speaker is Mary Hubbard, Assistant Director of Peterborough Town Library. If Mary were a book, she'd probably be nonfiction, though some of her careers do bridge the realm of fiction. We'd most likely call her an anthology. Her zest for life, curiosity, and thirst for knowledge, combined with the ability to tolerate risk, has led her to be a research intern at Radio Free Europe, a pastry chef, a community manager for a small private school, and in charge of communications, marketing, and organizational design for a number of not-for-profits. Her journey has taken her across the United States. Currently, she lives with her husband, Frank Corrado, in Hancock. Welcome, Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary Hubbard. First, I would like to thank the Hancock Planning Group for inviting me to participate on behalf of the Peterborough Town Library in this, their third annual celebration of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It's a great honor to share with you what the library is doing to address racism. It started with a question. One of our patrons, Alan Davis, had been reading about the case for reparations and wanted to learn more. He came to the library and asked for help in gathering information. During his research, we began to talk about his desire to share what he was learning with the larger Monadnock community. As Alan's research progressed, so did the idea of the possible library program. Alan, Grace Aldridge, Jim Guy, and I came together to design a two-part program entitled Talking About Race, Staying Curious, Moving Forward, and Being Part of the Solution. A program that encouraged thoughtful investigation, utilizing a methodology called liberating structures. The program was developed to explore and hopefully to begin to understand the issues that inform the lives of people of color. Grace and Jim generously offered to share their personal experiences about what it means to be Black in the U.S. today. Their stories were the starting point for the program and encouraged those in attendance to explore the various issues raised by their fellow community members. This two-part program was the most highly attended adult offering we've had at the library since I began my tenure. The program, which guides the participants through introduction to exploration and hopefully to action, has been repeated by this core group, along with the addition of Claire Holston, Doug Sutherland, and Louise Rosa, at various libraries and community centers in the area. For some of us, the first step was to learn more about this history, a history which affects all of us, but which often goes unacknowledged, particularly within predominantly white communities, and so a reading group emerged. The book club ran for 2 years. The conversations were important and thoughtful. I was humbled by what I did not know. Speaking bluntly, the social construct of race which was born on our shores has been used throughout history by politicians and civic leaders, even those I thought I respected, in the name of political expediency and with little regard for its effects and impact. To truly address racism, we must acknowledge this history, our history. Earlier this year, when our director, Corinne Chronopoulos, was reflecting on how the library should continue to provide resources and programming about racial justice, she decided that it was long past time to engage in further learning for herself and for the library staff. She asked me to create a training for the staff, and I jumped at the opportunity to share some of what I was learning. Starting at the end of June, we held a 3-part training seminar. The initial session was about the role of race in U.S. history. The second session covered racism in all its forms, individual, institutional, and systemic, how it evolves, and why it is so hard to dismantle. And finally, the third session was about practical steps for moving forward. The staff was paid both for reading time and for the training sessions because we felt it was important for them to see how seriously the library takes racial justice. From there, we condensed the program and ran it for our trustees in August. This was an additional commitment to ask of our busy volunteer trustees, but they stepped up to the challenge. Working with the knowledge that we gained from those sessions, we turned our focus back to the community. In September and October, the library hosted a community read of Austin Channing Brown's I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness. The discussions were invaluable, and we knew that we were committed to doing more. But what does more look like for the Peterborough Town Library? Well, we are currently working with community allies to develop more programming to increase engagement in the community. The Monadnock Center for History and Culture has already presented on their Citizen Archivist program, a program that was created to uncover the history of African Americans in the Monadnock region. It has been recorded in case you missed it. On February 16th, Alan Davis and Catherine Gekas will present a program called Our Reparations Journey. We have also applied to the American Library Association for a grant to support community conversations. If we receive the grant, our plan is to engage Black educators to provide ongoing programming so that the conversations may continue. As a civic institution, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to lead by example. We are committed to incorporating racial and social justice prominently in our next strategic plan. But even before that happens, we are taking steps to improve our access to our collections. By the time we move into our new facility, we will have reorganized the nonfiction collection, eliminating the Dewey system and replacing it with the book industry standard known as BISAC. This very large undertaking requires us to look at every volume and recategorize it according to the most intuitive and flexible system, which will continue to respond to the needs of our patrons. It will also allow us to look at bias. After all, how we organize knowledge affects how we understand it. We need to ask ourselves, why are so many memoirs of Black Americans found in the 300s, social sciences, rather than in the 900s, history, where their white counterparts are found? Imagine the impact of browsing the shelves to find an interesting biography and never seeing the stories of Black Americans, as if their history didn't exist. If nothing else, I have learned that there is no one roadmap for working on racial justice in our community. And so I ask, what will it look like for you? One of my favorite exercises from Liberating Structures is called the 15% solution. It's simple. Just ask yourself what you can do today with no more resources or authority than you currently have to move the needle just 15%. It's a powerful exercise, and I encourage everyone to try it. Going forward, I have learned to ask myself these three basic questions. On an individual level, I will ask myself, what assumptions am I making and why? On an institutional level, I will ask, what are we not seeing and why? And on a systemic level, I will ask, who benefits and why? The answers to these questions will guide my actions. So as you can tell, I happen to adore questions. I will end with one of my favorites from Dr. King, a question he said was one of life's most persistent and urgent, and that is, what are you doing for others? Thank you.
We are honored once again to have members from the Grapevines Teen Center and Program, known as Avenue A, join us in this event. Today's poets are participants of the Write Out High School Writing Club. Their voices offer valuable insights for us. Our first poet is Abby Theberge, who also made time to be part of this year's planning committee. Abby is a senior at Conval High School and has been a resident of Hancock for the past 4 years. While she has lived in Hancock, she has been very active in the greater Contucket Valley community, participating in groups like the Avenue A Teen Center's Writing Club and the Revolution Ethics Project, where she has been inspired to write about and discuss the many injustices plaguing our nation. She hopes to continue her work in the future by including political science in her collegiate studies and making progress towards a more equitable country, constantly inspired by the work of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Welcome, Abby.
There is a light burning at the end of the tunnel, but it seems to me like the tunnel never ends. I keep running and charging toward a brighter future, a blazing tomorrow, and yet the tunnel does not end. This never-ending tunnel is a journey through a dark and horrifying present, in which certain lives appear to be valued more than others. As my feet drag through the tunnel, I watch as beautiful human lives flash before my eyes and are gone in an instant at the hands of those who are supposed to protect them. I realize as I trudge through the tunnel that as dark and horrifying this present may be, I must continue on my path to a brighter future, because those who are walking alongside me in this tunnel are the ones who will light the spark that starts the revolution and ignite the future that lies ahead at the end of this dark and horrifying tunnel.
Our next presenter is Claire Holston. Claire, or Ms. Holston, is a part-time entrepreneur. As she says, a home personal trainer. But she also says that she is a social justice activist. She is a social justice activist in these ways. She functions as a member of the Commission on Religion and Race for the NEAC. That is a program in the United Methodist Church. She also is a delegate on the General Conference Judiciary Council, also for the United Methodist Church. Claire says that she is a co-chair of the Voice for something called the local church, where they say they give voice to those with no voice. Ms. Holston is an ambassador for the African American committed to excellence. And she also functions as a court-appointed special advocate for neglected and abused children. Claire lives in Milford and works for a local defense company here in New Hampshire. Ms. Holston lives with her wife and 3 beautiful, she says, Siberian Husky boys. Welcome, Claire Holston.
Good day. I want to take this opportunity to thank Doug and the Hancock Martin Luther King Planning Committee for inviting me to speak today. Indeed, it is an honor for me to speak on this Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Day. What a fitting theme, continuing the work, continuing his work, the work both nationally and here in New Hampshire as the new year is now upon us. While everyone is aware of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, there were many other speeches and quotes by Dr. King that sometimes get lost, yet in my mind are especially relevant at this time in history. One of his quotes states, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." In my email signature at work, I have a similar quote by Martin Luther King that states, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." Over the years, Many white people have been largely silent on race issues, and many non-Black people of color silent on issues related to Black people. Why? A core reason for this silence has been fear of messing up, saying the wrong thing, or doing the wrong thing. The murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor in 2020 moved and motivated people across the state, across the country, and all over the world to no longer remain silent on issues related to racial justice, anti-racism, and specifically anti-Blackism. It is recognized that using their voice in this way was new for many people. It wasn't perfect, and that's okay. In 2020, we had Black Lives Matter protests. We held race talk sessions at local libraries here in New Hampshire. We've had many book clubs that were established having meaningful discussions. We have had large and small companies looking at systemic racism within their organizations and are working to make changes, refusing to go back to business as usual. We have also seen people donate time and money, and others who are looking to support Black people in their everyday personal interactions. All great things for sure. As I've communicated on many occasions in 2020, this work would continue regardless of the outcome of the presidential elections, because these issues have been around through both Republican and Democratic presidents. And the urgency to do something about this is too important to think it is a one-time or one-sided issue. As we begin 2021, we recognize that we must continue this work. We need to remember that what is important is that the real commitment and engagement and all of us working together to humanize this effort. White supremacy and racism have been around a long time, over 400 years. And it's our responsibility to be a part of the solution, to keep up the good fight. This is not just one thing that needs, there's not just one thing that needs to be done to end this. There are so many things that people can do to keep this work moving to affect change. One, you can educate yourself, or continue to do so, about whiteness, white supremacy, racism, and what it means to be anti-racist. There are a list of resources, articles, books, films, podcasts to help you get started or continue on your journey of learning, healing, and transformation. You can discuss anti-racism. As you come to understand more, talk to your friends, to your family, to your colleagues, to your neighbors, those across the aisle from you, about what this means and what steps you are taking to act in solidarity with communities of color. You can talk to your kids about racism. The earlier we educate our children about racism, the less likely they are to perpetuate racist and white supremacist ideology. Talk to your faith leaders. If you're a part of a faith community, talk to your faith leaders about spiritual resources for peace and justice in your tradition. Get together with others and make a direct request that your church, your synagogue, your temple, or place of worship organize an explicitly anti-racist action plan. Get involved. Find a local or national organization that is fighting for racial justice and that reflects your values and your policy views. Contact your local elected officials. Get in touch with your local county, state, federal officials to urge them for systemic change. You need to speak out about racism. Any and every time you hear a remark or you witness an act with racist overtone, remember there's a practice zero tolerance for anti-Blackism at any level. Say something, not just sometimes, but every time. Silence is complicity and perpetuates the issues and the violence that we see today. Stop believing the lies that you've been told about Black people. Part of white supremacy's culture is believing that you know best and that you can fix it. Try reaching out, having discussions, and listening to Black people, and be willing to take cues from people of color. We have a more accurate view of society and the struggles that we face. This list doesn't even begin to make a dent in the many ways that this work can continue. I remember a conversation I had with a member of the New Hampshire Race and Equity series, whose vision and dream is that one day we won't have to have these type of discussions here in New Hampshire. How wonderful would that be? I'd like to leave you with a few additional quotes from Dr. King that hopefully you will embrace and take with you day to day. An individual has not started living until he or she can rise above the narrow confines of his or her individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, not popular, but must take it because conscience tells him it's the right thing to do. And lastly, the time is always right to do what is right. So in honor of Dr. King, this work continues. God bless.
The impact of racial discrimination on Black people and other people of color is 24/7. It permeates every facet of their lives. One is constantly seen as the other by those in the white dominant culture. It is an other that contains numerous negative stereotypes. Today, our focus is on Black people and other people of color. However, there are additional groups who experience being othered due to their ethnicity or their sexual orientation. They can identify with the ways that being reduced to a stereotype rather than being seen as full, complex human beings impacts their sense of selves and their well-being. We are fortunate in having our next Avenue A poet share their experiences and reflections. Rin Moon is a 9th grader who lives in Greenfield. They've been a member of the Avenue A Teen Center Creative Writing Club since early 2020. Welcome, Rin.
Equality. My opinions are just as important as those of a different generation or race. Just because we are different, we are looked down upon. They tell me to lengthen my skirt and stop putting so much makeup on my face. But what if I want to dress like that? As long as I don't stand out, right? I should be able to dress how I want, not how you want. No, I am not asking for it or looking to be stared at. I'm wearing clothes, not an invitation. God forbid I show my stomach. I have to cover my shoulders in school because I'm nothing more than a distraction, right? The scale turns into an exam and my weight becomes all that I am. My confidence gets cut into pieces because confidence and opinions aren't as important, right?
Charlie Foecking is a junior at Condell High School and uses they, he pronouns. They have been a member of the Avenue A Writing Club since 7th grade. They are an advocate for the rights of all humans, and their writing focuses mostly on criticizing capitalism and society as a whole. Charlie shared this quote: "White people are all too often the only voices in the discussion on race. In rural areas, majority being white New Hampshire, we must reflect on our own biases. Even if we want to think of ourselves as anti-racist, we still harbor racist ideas." We'd like to welcome Charlie.
I wanted to stand here and say nothing because my voice has been heard hundreds of times over thousands of years. I speak of things I do not understand. People who look like me, cast in stolen ivory, are listened to above all others, as if we are the voices of the divine. I have never known a God that has spoken through paper white lips, but I have never known a God at all. I see divinity, though, in moments when I close my mouth and I listen. But were I to stand here and say nothing, you would not understand the silence. I speak instead in an effort to describe silence to you. It is contradictory, but if I scrape together the letters of a language I barely know, perhaps you can hear the nothing between my words. I should not be listened to because I only read from the notes of others left in the margins. Remove freedom from your vocabulary if you are not willing to die for it. That's what he says. But I chop up his words and make them something you think it is mine. At least I admit it. My butchering of his words, done in only seconds, a quick Google search. But I hear your preaching, repeating the words of a man you never knew, and it is his words, yes, but your tone, your cadence, and you say it with a sneer, like you are proving a point. You killed him and are using his corpse in a macabre puppet show. You water down his righteousness, turn it to patriotism, nationalism, put him on t-shirts and mugs, and you call him peaceful. He conquered an enemy without ever harming a soul, but you ignore the bullet in his head, the blood under hands, and we all bleed the same color, sure, but maybe we shouldn't have to bleed at all.
We are very fortunate to have our next guest. Jonah Wheeler is a 17-year-old senior at local Conval High School. Jonah says that he is an activist. He works on the Monadnock Rights and Democracy Chapter leadership team and is on the Monadnock Showing Up for Racial Justice Committee. Again, we are fortunate to have Jonah with us. Welcome, Jonah.
While re-listening to Dr. King's speeches, I came across the Three Evils speech given at the Hungary Club Forum in Atlanta. This speech, more than any, resonates with our situation today. Dr. King talked about people crying for freedom while Congress legislated repression. He talked about how they passed an anti-riot bill rather than a serious poverty program. He knew better than most that a Congress that proves to be more anti-Negro than anti-rat must be dismissed. What they truly advocate, he said, is socialism for the rich and rugged capitalism for the poor. He saw the triple-pronged sickness within our society of racism, war, and poverty, and knew that the only way at that point in history to overturn this system of injustice was to create a solid, unified, and determined thrust to make justice a reality for all Americans. Despite all the opposition the movement faced, despite the danger they were in, they knew the importance of what they were doing. They had the courage to recognize that social movements will never be easy, but are necessary. Dr. King spoke about the danger of conceding to incremental change while lacking the soul and commitment to make justice a reality for all men. Forever busy with the expansion of their material wealth, people will not change unless they are pushed into that change. Right now, tens of millions of people face evictions, millions more lack health insurance. Our infrastructure crumbles while our nation is plagued with a virus that has shut down the livelihoods of so many, pushing all of us to the brink of collapse. At the same time, Congress approves upwards of trillions of dollars for wars abroad, pushing freedom on countries that don't need it, while our country lacks the freedom that we impose. We have become the opposite of what we say we are. The only solution to this utter failure to meet the needs of so many is to use this unprecedented moment in history to create the thrust necessary to shock the system into change. Those that administer this oppression are scared of one thing: us as a people realizing we have the power in this nation, and finally realizing that power, and using that power to create the nation that we all want to see. Call me naive, call me a dreamer, call me whatever you wish. I know that the courage to do this is there. Not just because so many have nothing to lose, not just because our nation is nearing collapse, but because it's the right thing to do. If you have a platform or a position of power and you're not using it right now to organize a mass movement of people to create the necessary momentum to bring this to a reality, you do not deserve that power. I'm making a plea to anyone listening to this who can do something to do something. Our leaders are playing with our lives, and it's time that we take control. As Dr. King said, break the moral lag that blinds us to the realities around us, and use that power to create a national strike to finally change this country. Thank you.
My name is Harriet DiCicco. I live in Hancock, and I've been a member of the Hancock Community Conversations on Race Group since its inception. We're so grateful to all of our speakers, poets, singers, and musicians for contributing to this third annual Hancock celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We would have preferred to be in physical community with all of you today. However, the need for COVID-19 safety protocols ruled out an indoor venue, and Mother Nature's capriciousness made an outdoor venue quite iffy in January. We thank the Hancock Congregational Church for providing this venue to us, their vestry building, because of the rain outside. We hope that as a result of this program, each of us will reflect on our ability, in fact, our responsibility, to find ways in our lives to speak out and act against all the forms which racism takes in our country, both overtly and covertly. We each may start out ignorant. However, once that ignorance is revealed, we must not ignore what is brought to light. Systemic racism does not exist only as an occurrence of the past. It does not exist only in urban areas, nor only where there are large, diverse populations. It exists here, and it exists now in our Monadnock region. When we talk about systems, it can seem that we are talking about impersonal structures resistant to change. However, systems are really groups of people brought together by policies and practices in a particular societal arena: educational systems, health systems, financial systems, transportation systems, religious systems, legal systems, political systems. People can become more aware of their implicit biases and prejudices built into the policies and practices in their particular societal arena. And thus they can begin to question those policies and practices. People can and do change their views and values. And it is in the aggregate of individuals committed to learning more and doing more about countering racism that we will make societal changes, systemic changes. So be assured that whatever you and I choose to do, it will be neither small nor inconsequential. And if you and I choose to do nothing, well, that also will be neither small nor inconsequential. Perhaps America will always be a dream. The ideals for which it was founded, liberty, equality, freedom, dignity, justice for all, are still ideals and not realities. Each new generation will face different circumstances and different challenges. And each new generation will have to find ways to realize the American ideals. They are goals that we must continually be mindful of and work towards. We are always in the becoming. We must be hopeful, for hope gives us the conviction and strength to do the work we must do. And there will always be work for us to do. And that work will make a difference. And now as we close our program, we are reminded of how Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. harnessed the power of music to encourage and inspire all of us in our work for freedom and justice for all. This rendition of America the Dream is a full orchestral version of the song, composed by Steve Shook and Mike Bradley, produced by Juilliard graduate student Shelby Rassler, and performed by the students of the Berklee College of Music.
Every mountain